Hey, I just wanted to take a minute to talk to my Essentials parents. It's week 16, and we are heading into the meat of our second semester, and I wanted to let you know that I am with you and I want to encourage you. I know that at this point in the journey, you can feel a little lost, you could feel a lot overwhelmed, and things just keep coming. New ideas and new grammar keeps coming. So I wanted to take a minute to share with you some points that hopefully will encourage you where you're at and that you can do the next step well. So the first thing I wanted to help you with is how do you prepare each week for the lessons? The Essentials binder, I know, has many different parts to it, but what I really would like you to do for yourself is to read the lesson before you come to class. And I know you've heard that message before, and I still think there's probably some people saying, how do I read this lesson? How do I take in this information so that I can understand it? The first thing you need to do in your lesson is to read this week at a glance. The gray bar is always your navigation tool of what are we doing this week? What concepts are we covering this week? So for example, in week 16, we're covering the complex structure, the interrogative purpose, the pattern is the subject, verb, transitive, indirect object, direct object. We have interjections, which is a review term. We're doing one new chart, one review chart, and we're going through all 6 tasks, which is new this week, which is what I modeled in class. On week 15. That's what on week 15. So when you are reading this for your own understanding, you should go through the lesson as the parent before you come to class and circle the terms and underline and highlight, and in the margins, write out your questions. I don't understand this. This doesn't make sense. So that when you come to class or before class, if you want to, let me know what your questions are so I can make sure that I equip you during class that you understand those parts of the lesson. Then you'll want to make sure that you read the end of each lesson. There is always this section that says at home. So if you want to know what to do during the week, turn to this part of the lesson and it tells you which charts and which daily tasks you should do to reinforce that lesson with your students. So each week you need to read for understanding, and what that means is taking in the new information and trying to understand it for yourself. I know that for a lot of people, where we're at in this grammar section, it's still grammar to you. It's still new words. It's still new concepts. So just like we learn in foundations, you take those new concepts and you repeat them. You repeat the definitions over and over. So in preparation for yourself, find out what your new grammar is and identify it and seek to understand it. If it is not understandable in the lesson, make sure you note what the questions are and make sure that you ask myself or somebody else who is in class so that you leave feeling like those questions have been answered. This next point is super important. Make sure you can pick up from where we are. Even if you are feeling completely overwhelmed at this point, it is okay to just start from where we're at. It's not too late. You don't have to go back to the beginning and master everything so far. We have plenty of review items from this point forward that you will start to hear again, and if it's something you haven't mastered in the last 15 weeks, you'll have another chance to pound that peg home. Realize that you too are in a grammar stage, a dialectic stage, or a rhetoric stage of learning this curriculum. So if you are in the grammar stage, then just start becoming familiar with each of the terms and what they mean. I also wanted to model for you a little bit of what we do in my house. By no means is this the only way to do Essentials at home, but after 3 years, this is what works for me. And my kids, if they're at all like your kids, really this is not the highlight of their day. they would like to go build forts or maybe write the creative writing lesson in IEW. So for us, I limit ourselves to essentials to, I want to get in at least 30 minutes. If it takes a little longer, that's okay. But if I can squeeze this into 30 minutes, I probably can capture my students' motivation and their enthusiasm for doing what I ask them to do. So for the lesson, each day, what we do is we start with our definitions. And I have listed those out in our homework each week. And remember, you find the definitions, the parts of speech, terms, at the beginning of your lesson, right here at the top. And this week, we have a review term. We only have one. It's called interjection. So I would ask my students at the table on Monday morning, write out the definition for an interjection. An interjection is a word or phrase used as a strong expression or feeling of emotion. And they would write that out on a single piece of paper and then put it in their binder for week 15 or in a special section for just definitions so they know where all their definitions are. So we spend 5 minutes on definitions every day. The first day you write it out and you say it 7 times. The second day, you say it 7 times. The third day, you say it 7 times. The fourth day, maybe you see if you can write it out and count that as saying it 4 times. And then you say it 3 more times. But if you say that definition 7 times a day in 5 minutes, you will have said it almost 28 times before you come back to class. 9 times out of 10, you're going to learn that definition. So spend 5 minutes on definitions. And if, like this week, we just have one term, go back and pick up one from last week and review that. Spend 5 minutes on definitions. Then you want to move to your charts. This week, we have chart N, which is the verb anatomy chart of to have. And verb anatomy charts are super important to the curriculum, but they are also very large charts. That's why it's been broken up into 4 sections for you. So work on memorizing just the simple structure and getting that down. The way that we do charts is I set a timer for 15 minutes. The first 5 minutes, we are going to take our new chart and say it as many times as we can in 5 minutes. We'll spend the next 10 minutes with a piece of paper, blank piece of paper, and a pen, copying either the new chart or a chart that I am working on mastery. And if you're just at the grammar stage, work on mastering chart A. Go back to chart A and either pull out a copy and copy it or see what you can do from memory. If you only get through part of it, that's okay. Tomorrow, when we sit back down at the table, you can work on the next part. And I bet if you spend 15 minutes on charts every day, you'll have at least one chart copied by the end of the week to bring to class and get your ticket. If you have more than one chart, fantastic. If you want to spend more than 15 minutes, okay. I would say do 15 minutes, and then if they want to spend more time on it on their own, that's great. Because I want to make sure that I get to my sentences every week. So if you don't understand the lesson, even after you've read it, you've come to class, you've asked your questions, you get home on Monday, you've done your definitions, you've done your best to look at charts, and now it's time for sentences. Even if you don't understand the concepts we're doing, if you just turn to the sentences and walk through them line by line, you will find that there is a pattern that is repeated in every sentence. And if you touch this every week, if you do even the first sentence 4 times, you don't have to do all of 4 sentences. Maybe do the easiest first sentence 4 times. You will find that it gets easier with repetition. So even if you're at the grammar stage and you don't understand what we're doing, walking through this script is going to help you understand the concepts. So let's do the first sentence for this week. So what I would do is dictate it to my students. Okay, everybody take out a piece of paper and a pen, and we will dictate the sentence. Did Jesus, who died for me, make me a crown? And I would give that time to write that down, repeat the sentence slowly. Did Jesus, who died for me, make me a crown? Number 2, write in the script. It says check the mechanics. There are the same questions on check the mechanics for every sentence. All the answers are yes. Is there a subject? Yes. Is there a verb? Yes, because the sentence already has been done. Does it begin with a capital letter? Yes. But it's a good chance to tell your students, double check. Did you begin yours with a capital letter? Does it have an end mark? Make them slow down and look at their work. Did they put an end mark in there? Does it make complete sense? We routinely go through these questions and answer yes, 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 but I try and slow them down and say, ask yourself, does that make sense? Is other punctuation and capitalization correct? This is a great chance to have a comma conversation with our sentence. Did Jesus, who died for me, make me a crown? They should look on their sentence and they should make sure they have put the commas in for the subordinate clause to offset it, who died for me. And then our other words are all the words spelled correctly. We all can use help with spelling, so this is a chance for people to ask questions and you be the human dictionary on spelling. If they need spell check and something's wrong, you can have a quick conversation on phonetics, on why things are spelled certain ways in the sentence. But then don't get hung up on it. Go ahead and move on in the sentence. So now we go to question confirmation. And if you don't know the order of question confirmation, it's written for you right in the script. Did Jesus make me a crown? Independent clause. I ask my students, what is the independent clause? And we will underline, did Jesus make me a crown? Okay, next question. Who did make me a crown? Jesus, subject, noun. What is being said about Jesus? Jesus did make. Oh, did. What is did? And you want to give your students a chance to think about this. What is did? Oh, did's the helping verb. So I label that verb helping. And make is the main verb. Jesus did make what? A crown. Can crown, let's see, can crown replace or describe Jesus? No. Crown, label crown, direct object, and your verb transitive. Did make a crown for whom? And give them a chance to answer. For me. Label for me an indirect object. Now, I ask my students, well, in my independent clause, what words have we not identified yet? This little word, a crown. Well, what question does that answer? In here, in your teacher's manual, it says, which crown? And you can have a conversation. Well, what kind of words answer which? And that leads you to your adjective questions. So a is an article adjective. Now we have labeled everything in our independent clause. We get the chance to go back to our subordinate clause and ask all the questions again. So we ask, which Jesus? Which Jesus? The Jesus who died for me. That's our subordinate clause, and it is adjectival because it's answering the question which. It's giving us more information about Jesus, and we know it's also adjectival because it starts with a relative pronoun. Who died? Who died? Who? Subject pronoun. What is being said about who? Who died? Verb. And who died what? Who died whom? Well, you might answer for me, but what you need to recognize is for. It should ring a bell because you've memorized your preposition list. So for me ends up being our preposition. So this subject, it becomes a verb intransitive. You could just say, Jesus who died, and that would be a complete sentence. So that makes this verb intransitive. Why did he die? Why did he die? For me, prepositional phrase, and it's going to be adverbial because it's answering the question why, which is an adverb. So this is a preposition, and this is our object of the preposition. Now that we have everything labeled, we ask them, well, how do we classify this? What kind of sentence? What is the structure? And they should answer complex because it has an independent clause and one subordinate clause. What is the purpose? Oh, my end mark was incorrect. What is the purpose of this sentence? It's interrogative because it's asking a question. What is the pattern? Well, the pattern of the independent clause is subject, verb transitive, indirect object, direct object, and the pattern for the dependent or subordinate clause is subject, verb, intransitive. The reason why you want to identify those patterns is it should link in your brain back to what you've memorized on chart A for the next step. How do I diagram these? Well, if my main pattern is subject, verb transitive, indirect object, direct object, and I've memorized that from chart A, I know what the lines should look like, and I know what goes in each of these spaces. So, subject noun, Jesus. Did make, your helping verb and your verb transitive go together. Me, indirect object. Crown, direct object. And your adjectives always go on a slanted line under the word they are modifying. Now, this is a complex sentence. Who died for me has its own pattern, a subject and a verb intransitive. So I know that that is subject, verb intransitive. And I know that it's adjectival because it's answering which Jesus. So I know I need to put it underneath Jesus and connect my subject to my subject. And if you forget how to diagram it, they have it in the teacher's manual. So now I just need to add my prepositional phrase for me. And you have done tasks 1 through 4. And for most of us, if you're in the grammar stage of essentials, that's what you do every week. This week we have a special challenge because I've introduced you to tasks 5 and 6. So let's quickly go through tasks 5 and 6 orally. I encourage you to do this orally with your students until it becomes easy. So I asked them, well, what is the purpose? It's interrogative. Let's just take out this who died for me and make this a simple sentence. If I want, I could rewrite it for them. You could just say it. Let's say, start with Jesus made me a crown. Can you make that into an exclamatory? And you have them repeat it back to you. Can you make it into an interrogative? Oh, they'll switch it back this way. Did Jesus make me a crown? Can you make it into an imperative? They'll think and say, make me a crown. Good. Can you rewrite it by structure? Just use the declarative. You don't have to go through all of these, but choose one of these to get your students to think that they know how to think through what each of these changes are. So if Jesus made me a crown is the simple, what would be the give me a compound? Well, we have to use a fanboy and another independent clause. It's a good review. Jesus made me a crown and he died for me. So there's examples here that you could flip on your students. You could ask them to give you a compound sentence, or you could read what is in the lesson and say, well, what is the structure of that sentence? If I said, Jesus who died for me made me a crown, what is the structure of that sentence? They should jump on this and say, oh, it's complex, because we already figured that out. That is modification. That is task 5. And task 6 is quid et quo. I would encourage you to find the quid et quo section. It's on page 437 in your essentials guide. Copy it, put it in a sheet protector if you have not already purchased the laminated quid et quo from CC. You can use either one, but what it is to reinforce to yourself and to the students the reasons why we're studying the charts. These charts are not just independent from our purpose. Our purpose is to take every word in a sentence and be able to tell everything there is to know about that word. That's our goal. And so the first thing you do with quid et quo is you take one word. Pick a noun or a verb. I encourage you, pick a noun or a verb. So you might need to have your noun chart handy or your verb chart handy. If you haven't memorized that chart yet, it might be helpful when you do quid et quo to have that handy. Also, quid et quo for each of these sentences is outlined for you in your lesson. So let's take the verb died, verb intransitive, and you ask, what is the type of verb is it? It's a verb intransitive. Is it singular or plural? Well, it's singular because the subject is singular. There's another good discussion there if you need it, that our verbs agree with our subjects in number. What person is it? First, second, or third person? That might take a little bit of understanding, but if you don't know what person it is, just read out of your manual and think about, well, why do they say that it's third person? And we can go back, if you don't understand the reasons why, write down your question, bring it back to class so we can have further discussion on that. Is it simple, perfect, progressive, perfect, progressive? Well, it's just died. There's no to have and there's no to be. So it's simple. It's just who died. And is it present, past, or future? It's past, happened in the past. Is it active or passive? That's a good review of last week's lesson. Who's doing the action? The subject, is he performing the action, or is the subject receiving the action? So this is an active verb because who is performing the dying? Who died? And mood is an advanced level for verbs of indicative, imperative, or subjunctive. There's definitions for that on the verb chart. This one is indicative. You can just gloss right over that until you're ready to take in that additional information. But I wanted to model for you how to take a sentence and go all the way through and then be done. File it away, put it in your binder, give everybody high fives, and move on to the next lesson. Tomorrow when you come back, go back over your definition. Spend 5 minutes saying your definition. Go back over your charts. Spend 5 minutes saying the new chart, 10 minutes writing out any chart. Do 10 minutes of diagramming a sentence all the way through the 6 tasks. And if it's too difficult to move for a new sentence, do the same sentence every day. And come back to class and find out if maybe we might do it as review. And so everybody will be excited because they'll know it. So I hope this is a bit of encouragement to you. I know this has been a long video, but I appreciate you taking the time to watch it. If there are more things that I can share with you, I would be glad to hear from you, your feedback, if this is helpful. But hopefully you'll come away feeling like I can do this. If I just follow these steps, I too can lead my student through this week's Essentials lesson. Thank you.